The desert didn't whisper. It roared. Wind howled across the cracked floor of the Jornada del Muerto, lifting sand into spiraling devils that scratched at skin and stung the eyes. The sun bore down like a punishment, unblinking, ancient. And there, amid all that emptiness, a figure crawled. Mariela Cordero's hands were raw. The skin of her palms had split days ago, blistered, bled, crusted, and torn again. Each movement left a smear of blood in the sand. Her lips were cracked, her tongue thick, useless. One eye was swollen shut, a reminder of the gunstock blow from yesterday, or had it been 2 days? Time had lost its grip. Pain and heat had unraveled it. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew that she had to move. To stop was to die. Her dress had once been white, a healer's tunic. Now it clung to her in tatters, stiff with sweat, blood, and desert dust. Her satchel, which once held bandages, herbs, and tinctures, had been ripped from her shoulder when they'd thrown her off the wagon. Her only remaining possession was a pendant tucked beneath her collarbone, a relic from her mother, wood and silver shaped like a heart, now burning hot against her skin. Buzzards circled overhead, cruelly patient. Mariela's mind spun in fragments. A child coughing in her arms. Laughter in a candle-lit tent. Fire. Screams. And then, Trask's face twisted in contempt, his voice gravelly and cold. "You're on your own, Bruja." It hadn't always been that way. Trask had seemed reasonable at first. A week ago, she joined the caravan near Santa Fe. Word had traveled fast. Trask's group was headed west, carrying supplies and gold, and they needed a medic. She'd been helping at a Catholic mission, nursing soldiers and peasants alike, but the pay was dust and devotion. The caravan offered coin and, more importantly, a chance to leave behind the whispers. Rumors followed her, of things she'd done in war camps, of her dreams that came true, of her herbs that healed too fast. The priests tolerated her only because she cleaned their wounds. Trask had interviewed her in a saloon. His left hand was missing 3 fingers, and he drummed the remaining ones on the table as she spoke. His eyes were blue, pale and hard like frozen water. "You Apache?" he asked. "No. You work with him?" "I heal who needs healing." He had smirked then. That's a fine answer. Now that smirk haunted her like a curse. She remembered the night it all went wrong. The stars had been bright. Coyotes had howled nearby. The fire had been low, the air thick with unease. Trask's men sat closer together than usual. Even the horses seemed nervous. Mariela had been tending to a boy, barely 16, shot in the calf during a skirmish with a bandit group 2 days earlier. She was tying off the bandage when she heard it, 3 soft clicks, almost like sticks breaking. Then came the gunfire. Men screamed. Oaths thundered. And Mariela had just enough time to see the glint of betrayal in Trask's eyes before he grabbed her by the hair and dragged her from the wagon. "They think you warned him," he spat. "You and your Apache friends." "I don't. What are you talking about?" "They hit us too clean. Like they knew we were coming." "You've been passing notes, Bruja?" "I'm not a witch, I'm a healer. I didn't warn anyone." His boot met her ribs and she gasped. Another man, lanky and silent, raised a rifle. "Shoot her or leave her." "Let's move." Trask crouched. His breath smelled like whiskey and rot. "This is desert law now, girl. No courts. No priests. Just sand and consequence." The gunshot was sudden. Pain exploded in her side. She remembered falling. Her last view was of wagon wheels kicking up dust as the caravan rode off, leaving her behind like spoiled cargo. Now, days later, she barely remembered how she'd survived the first night. A fever had gripped her. She remembered hallucinations. Her brother one whispering to her from a tree that had no roots, her mother crying in the sky. The bleeding had slowed by morning, but the thirst was worse. Her canteen had been ripped from her belt. All she had was will. A shadow passed over her now. Mariela blinked upward. A hawk this time, not a buzzard. Its wings were wide and gold-edged. It circled once, then vanished into the sun. She tried to laugh. It came out like a sob. She didn't know how long she crawled. Maybe hours. Maybe days. Her limbs no longer obeyed thought. They moved from some primal place, instinct carved into bone. At last her fingers found rock, shade. A shallow cave, barely large enough for her to squeeze inside. She collapsed onto the cool stone, every breath rattling. This was it. She knew it in her marrow. Her thoughts turned to death not as a fear but as a shape. A man in black, maybe. Or a woman with empty eyes. She didn't dread it, she was only sorry. Sorry for the children she hadn't helped. For her brother, whose body they never found. For her mother, who had once said, "Mija, you are too brave for this world." She clutched the pendant at her throat. Her lips moved. A prayer? A curse? Even she didn't know. Then through the haze came footsteps. At first she thought it was the wind again. Just sand shifting, rocks settling. But no, the rhythm was too human. Soft, steady, deliberate. She didn't lift her head. Couldn't. But her ears strained. Silence. Then a breath. Someone stood just beyond the rock's edge. A man. Or a ghost. He knelt beside her. She didn't open her eyes, but she felt his presence. A scent, smoke, cedar, sweat. Not foul but earthy. Real. Fingers touched her wound. Not roughly. Not like Trask. These fingers knew the language of pain. They pressed gently, then withdrew. Mariella's lashes fluttered. For a heartbeat, her vision cleared. A face. Bronze skin. Sharp cheekbones. Hair tied back with leather. Eyes the color of dark stone, watching her with quiet judgment. And something else, sorrow. Don't, she rasped. It was all she could manage. The man said nothing. He unrolled a pouch and began grinding herbs on a flat stone. Mariella's last conscious thought was absurd. His hands looked like they've never hurt a woman. Then the dark came. When she woke, it was night. A fire cracked nearby. The wound in her side throbbed, but it was bound. Something cool and bitter had been smeared across it. She turned her head. The man sat with his back to her, silhouetted by firelight, sharpening a blade. You should have left me, she croaked. He didn't turn. You're not dead. Not yet, she muttered, her voice dry as bone. Silence. Finally he spoke. You from the church caravans? I was with Trask's group. He turned then. The firelight lit half his face, the other in shadow. Trask should have died years ago. I think he's working on it. The man smiled. Barely. It flickered like the flame. Mariella licked her lips. You Apache? He nodded once. She exhaled. So he was right. I die with the Indians after all. You die with whoever finds you, he said. She stared at him. You're not going to kill me? If I was, you'd be dead. Mariella closed her eyes. A tear slid down her temple. She hadn't even known it was there. The fire popped. What's your name? She asked. He poked at the fire with a stick. Taklashim. What does it mean? He didn't answer. Sleep took her again, slow and unwilling. When she awoke, dawn bled across the desert like spilled paint. Taklashim was already moving, packing what little he had. Where are you going? She asked. He crouched beside her. You need water. Shelter. You won't make it alone. She frowned. You're taking me? You don't want to die here, do you? I might still die. He nodded. Yes, but not today. Mariella stared at him. She didn't understand this man. She didn't trust him. But something inside her, something deeper than fear, said follow him. Taklashim lifted her carefully. His arms were solid and warm. As he began walking, the desert stretched out ahead, endless and merciless. But now she wasn't alone. Behind them, buzzards circled the empty rock. Waiting for someone else. The desert changed after dawn. The light softened, the wind quieted, but nothing about it became less deadly. Mariella lay slumped against Taklashim's back, barely conscious. Each step he took jolted her wound, but she didn't cry out. Her strength had retreated somewhere deep, leaving only instinct behind. Her arm, too weak to hold on, dangled limp over his shoulder. Sand clung to her skin like a second layer, and every breath she took felt like inhaling flame. But she was alive. Taklashim moved with purpose. He did not speak, but his gaze never wavered from the horizon. His boots barely left prints. He walked like someone born to the earth, part of the desert rather than an intruder within it. Occasionally he paused to scan the distant ridges. Every decision he made, when to veer toward a ridge, when to duck low between dry riverbeds, was precise, calculated. Not for her benefit, not entirely. He moved like a man who expected danger, not one merely avoiding it. When the sun rose higher, he stopped beside a cluster of sun-bleached boulders. Without a word, he laid her down in the shade and fetched a water skin from his side. He tilted it carefully to her lips. The first swallow burned her throat. The second one tasted like hope. She blinked, managing to croak a single word. Why? His face remained expressionless. You were dying. That doesn't answer anything. He capped the water skin and turned away, crouching to examine her bandage. It was already soaked through again. She watched him work, the concentration in his eyes, the gentleness in his movements. He wasn't just tending a wound. He was measuring her odds. You should have left me, she whispered. You said that before. He peeled the old wrap away. Her flesh beneath was an angry red rimmed with black. His jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. Instead, he crushed more of the herbs he carried in a leather pouch and packed them gently into the wound. They smelled bitter and sharp like copper and sage. Mariella winced. Where are we going? North, he replied. There's nothing north but heat and rock. There's water. Shelter. You know this place that well? He nodded. This is my land. I was born here. Bled here. Buried people here. She didn't ask what he meant. Some wounds live deeper than the skin. They moved again when the sun started to lean west. Mariella insisted on trying to walk, and Taklashim allowed it, for 10 steps. Her knees buckled, and he caught her before she hit the ground. Without complaint, he lifted her once more. She hated the weakness. Hated how small she felt. I had a brother, she murmured. He didn't respond. One. He went missing near Las Cruces. They said the Apaches took him. Still nothing. I didn't believe them. He wasn't a soldier. Just a cook. Sometimes, Taklashim said at last, they take people alive. Sometimes not. She didn't ask which fate he thought more merciful. By dusk, they reached a dry arroyo that curved like a scar through the valley. Beneath a twisted mesquite tree, he made camp. No fire this time, just cool shadows and silence. He handed her a strip of jerky and ate one himself. As she chewed, she watched him carve something into the dust with a small stick. Symbols. Curves and lines. Apache writing, maybe. Or maybe just his thoughts. Taklashim, she said. That name, what does it mean? He looked up, mildly surprised she'd asked again. It means lone flint. Like a spark? He nodded. Seems right, she said softly. A pause settled between them. Why are you alone? She asked. He wiped the dust drawings away with his hand. The army came to my village. We had been told we'd be safe if we stayed out of their path. Her stomach sank. My mother begged them not to shoot. They did it anyway. My sister tried to run. They caught her. He said no more. He didn't need to. I'm sorry, she whispered. He met her eyes then, not with anger but with something else, something older. Resignation. She saw how much he carried without ever letting it show. Guilt. Rage. Loss. All packed into silence and action. You have medicine, he said suddenly. Not just herbs. You know the Spanish ways too. She nodded. I trained under a doctor in Veracruz before the war. But I learned my grandmother's ways first. She was a curandera? Yes. You are both. A little too much of both, I think. He grunted. That's why Trask feared you. Mariella snorted softly. He doesn't fear me. He fears anything he can't control. Taklashim's gaze sharpened. He will come back. She stiffened. He left me for dead. If he knows you lived, he'll want to finish it. She thought of his pale eyes. The lazy menace in his voice. The way he smiled when he hurt someone. Trask didn't forgive debts. And he would see her survival as betrayal. But how would he know? She asked. Taklashim tapped the earth. Tracks smoke. Water missing from a known well. He has scouts. She swallowed hard. He shifted closer to the edge of the arroyo and began to sweep away any signs of their presence. It was meticulous, erasing footprints, dispersing crushed brush. He even scattered ashes from her burned dress to confuse scent trails. She watched, understanding now that he hadn't just saved her. He was protecting her in every way he knew how. That night the desert spoke again. Coyotes yipped in the distance. An owl called out once, then was silent. Mariella couldn't sleep. Her body ached. Her mind raced. She turned her head toward Taklashim. He sat upright against the tree, blade in hand, half-lidded eyes scanning the darkness. You don't rest. I listen. Do you trust me? He blinked slowly. I trust what I see. What do you see? He hesitated. A woman who survived being left to die. That says enough. Mariella closed her eyes. That would have to be enough for now. They rose before the sun the next morning. Taklashim moved quickly, forcing her to keep pace despite the pain. Her wound throbbed, but it had stopped bleeding. She sensed that if they could find water soon, she might just live through this. The canyon they followed narrowed, the walls climbing high and smooth. Taklashim paused near a rock face and knelt beside a shallow depression. He scraped sand away to reveal a faint spring. Water beaded up from the stone, clean and cold. He let her drink first, cupping his hands. Tasted like life. She smiled weakly. This is holy water. He nodded. The moment was broken by a a sharp crack, distant, unnatural. Mariella's spine stiffened. What was that? Taklashim turned slowly, his posture shifting. His fingers curled over the hilt of his knife. He whispered, "Rifle stock. Wood against stone." Her breath caught. Trask. His scouts. Looking. They're close? Too close. He moved to obscure the spring, spreading dirt over it again. Then he helped her up and led her quickly through the rocks. They didn't run, running left signs. But they moved with urgency, doubling back through narrow trails, crossing over slick rock to break their trail. Mariella struggled to keep up, but fear was a strong motivator. By midday they reached a narrow ravine. At the far end, a natural stone shelf jutted out, providing cover and shade. Taklashim guided her beneath it and motioned for silence. They crouched there, breaths shallow. Minutes passed. Then came the voices. 2 men. One sounded young, mocking. The other gruff, impatient. Trask says the bitch might still be breathing. Then he should have shot her twice. They say some Apache ghost is carrying her. That'd be just like her. Witching up desert spirits. Their boots crunched the dirt above them. Mariella held her breath. Taklashim's eyes were closed, counting the steps by sound alone. One passed directly above them. The stone under their feet trembled. Then, fading. Laughter. Spitting. Footsteps retreating. Only then did she exhale. Taklashim remained still for a moment longer, then nodded. They're not smart. But they're close. Mariella shivered. Why is he so obsessed with me? I'm not worth the bullets. Taklashim glanced at her. Because you know the truth. About the ambush. About him. Her stomach turned. You can't go back, he said softly. Not to the town. Not to the mission. Not unless you're ready for war. She looked down at her hands. Shaking, dirty, calloused. I'm not a fighter. You don't have to be, he said. You just have to survive long enough to become something else. She met his gaze. There was no comfort there, but there was honesty. And somehow that was enough. She nodded. Then we keep moving. He stood, offering her his hand. This time she took it. The path twisted upward through jagged hills, a bone-colored spine of stone and shadow. Mariella leaned heavily on Taklashim's arm as they climbed. Her feet bled. Her breath came ragged and short, but her eyes had changed. No longer dull with pain, they now held something stubborn, some small, angry flame that refused to die. They hadn't spoken much since escaping the scouts. Words wasted air, and air was in short supply. But they shared a rhythm now, a silent understanding born of necessity. She trusted him, and he moved with an awareness of her. Never too fast, always listening for her faltering steps behind him. Late in the day they reached a plateau overlooking a wide basin. Below them, the land dipped into red earth and dry grass, scattered with mesquite and boulders. Far beyond it, almost blending into the horizon, smoke curled lazily from a ridge. Not a campfire. Bigger. Too wide to be a cook fire. Mariella pointed. Is that them? Taklashim didn't answer at first. He crouched beside a rock, watching the smoke trail twist in the wind. Too close to the springs, he said at last. They're waiting. Then we go around? There is no around. Mariella exhaled slowly. Then what? His eyes narrowed. We wait for night. They stayed under a low ledge, shielded from the sky. The wind picked up as the sun dipped below the rocks, turning cool, laced with dust. Mariella tore strips from her petticoat and rewrapped her feet. She winced but made no sound. Pain had become background noise. Why do you still help me? She asked, voice low. You owe me nothing. Taklashim didn't look at her. When I found you I thought you were dead. But you were breathing. Just barely. And I remembered someone who once breathed the same way. Who? My sister. Mariella turned to him. I couldn't carry her, he continued. There were too many soldiers. I was too young. I ran. Hid in a cave while they took her. A silence bloomed between them. You carry me because you couldn't carry her. He didn't deny it. She looked at her hands. I would have died out there. Part of me still wants to. But you haven't. No. Then don't waste it. Something in his tone made her sit straighter. She didn't know if it was a command or a prayer. When darkness came, it came heavy. The moon, still rising, was a dull sliver behind a veil of clouds. Taklashim moved like a shadow, guiding her down the trail toward the basin. They kept low, weaving between rocks and dry brush. Each step felt like the loudest sound in the world. Every snapped twig, every dislodged pebble might betray them. Halfway down the slope, Taklashim stopped suddenly and dropped to a crouch. Mariella mirrored him, heart hammering in her throat. Voices drifted toward them, low, male, and different. Men by a fire. Laughing. One of them tossed a bottle that shattered on stone. Taklashim whispered, 3. 1 by the fire, 2 on patrol. The horses are tied north of the tents. You plan to steal them? No. We take water and vanish. He led her around the perimeter, close enough to hear their breathing, to smell sweat and tobacco. One of the men stomped toward the edge of the firelight to relieve himself. Taklashim froze. Mariella didn't breathe. The man muttered something about sand fleas and spat, then turned and walked back. They moved again. Taklashim reached the supply saddlebag near the horses. Mariella knelt beside him, fingers shaking as she helped pull out a flask, a half loaf of bread, and a rolled map. The last item made him pause. He unrolled it with care. Ink scratched over worn parchment. Trails. Names. A red X marked a canyon she didn't recognize. Is that their fallback camp? He said. This is what Trask came for. Land? No. There's silver near that canyon. Maybe gold. Mariella swallowed. That's why they attacked the villages. To clear the land. Men like Trask always want more. Doesn't matter what they destroy. Suddenly, a voice behind them. Hey! Mariella turned as the firelight caught movement. One of the men stood, squinting into the dark. Thought I saw something. Taklashim pushed her flat to the ground and pressed a finger to his lips. The man took a few steps forward, paused, then scratched his head. Nah. Just shadows. He ambled back to the fire. Mariella's pulse screamed in her ears. When they reached the ridge again, she collapsed beside a dry bush, chest heaving. We got what we needed, Taklashim said. They'll come after us. Yes. She looked at the map again. If there's a hidden canyon, could we hide there? He traced a line with his finger. Too obvious. He'll expect that. Then we use it against him. Taklashim raised a brow. You said it yourself, she continued. They think we're weak. Just a wounded woman and a ghost in the desert. They're wrong. Exactly. So let's make them prove it. He considered this. Then nodded. The next morning they left false trails. Mariella scattered bloody cloth from her bandages near the canyon entrance. Taklashim dragged a blanket to mimic someone crawling. They snapped branches, crushed brush, poured water near a boulder to mimic spilled canteens. Then they vanished into a narrow cleft known only to him. For 2 days they watched the mouth of the canyon from a cliff above. On the third, Trask arrived. He rode with 6 men, hardened, sunburned, rifles ready. Trask dismounted first, wearing his familiar grin. But his eyes were sharp. Suspicious. He scanned the ground, saw the signs, and nodded. Dumb bastards ran straight into the rocks, he said. One man asked, should we follow? Trask gestured forward. Course. Flush 'em out. They can't be far. Mariella crouched beside Taklashim as the men filed past below. He whispered, now. They struck fast. Taklashim slid down the cliffside, blade in hand. The first man barely turned before the knife found his throat. Mariella aimed the revolver she'd taken from the saddlebag and fired twice. The second shot hit a scout in the chest. He dropped with a grunt. The others scrambled, shouting, returning fire toward nothing. Taklashim darted between rocks, impossible to track. Another fell, screaming. Mariella used their panic against them, moving behind cover, picking her shots. The pain in her side screamed every time she twisted, but she didn't stop. She was a healer, yes. But today she was something else. Trask's voice roared over the chaos. Find the witch. Kill the red bastard. But one by one his men fell. Some ran. Some bled into the earth. And when only Trask remained, bleeding from a shoulder wound, he stood alone at the canyon mouth, revolver shaking. Taklashim stepped into view. Silent. So, come on, you desert ghost. Trask spat. You think you can scare me? Mariella rose behind him. Her voice was steady. No. But I can. He spun. She shot once. Trask dropped. Dust settled. Silence returned. Taklashim walked to her side. They looked down at the body together. No words passed between them. Later they burned the map. Let the silver stay buried. Let the canyon return to stone and silence. That night, Mariella stitched her own wound beneath a blanket of stars. Her hands trembled, but she smiled. You were right, she said. I didn't have to be a fighter. You became one anyway. She turned to him. What now? Taklashim looked north, toward hills that no longer held danger. We find your brother, he said. If he still breathes, we'll know. And if not, then we bury him proper. Mariella stared at the stars. And after that? He met her eyes. Then we live. The sun crept over the horizon like a silent witness, casting long shadows across the desert floor as if unwilling to disturb what the night had left behind. Mariella stood atop a rocky ledge, watching the light stretch over the land that had nearly killed her, and now defined her. The blood on her dress had dried into black rust-colored streaks, the bruises faded into dull purples and yellows, but the fire inside her still smoldered. Below, Taklashim prepared the horses with quiet purpose. Their journey wasn't over, but the chapter of survival had turned into something else entirely. Vengeance had passed. Now came resolution. 2 days earlier, they'd buried the last of the bodies in a shallow arroyo. No prayers. No crosses. Just stones and silence. Taklashim said the dead didn't care for ceremony, only truth. And the truth was, most of them died chasing something that was never theirs to take. Mariella turned and descended the slope. Her steps were lighter now, more deliberate. Her ribs still ached and the skin on her arms peeled from sun and wind, but she was whole. Changed but whole. As she reached Taklashim, he handed her a piece of jerky and gestured toward the eastern trail. We ride fast. If your brother's still alive, he's at Fort Garrison. The map said they took prisoners there. If not. She didn't need him to finish the thought. She nodded. Then we'll know. They mounted up and rode hard across the basin, the horses' hooves sending clouds of ochre dust into the wind. Hours passed in silence, save for the rhythmic clop of hooves and the occasional vulture circling overhead. The land was vast and indifferent, but Mariella no longer felt lost in it. She belonged here now, if not to the desert itself, then to its fire. By late afternoon, a thin black line on the horizon resolved into the jagged silhouette of Fort Garrison. Built against a bluff with wood palisades and watchtowers, it sat like a scar on the earth. A Union flag, faded and half-torn, snapped in the wind. It was more outpost than fort, half forgotten by the government that had built it. That made it dangerous. They waited until dusk. Then, under the cover of deepening shadows, they made their way closer, circling around a low ridge until they found a path obscured by brush and a dry streambed. Taklashim signaled for silence and dismounted. We scout first. If it's crawling with Trask's men, we retreat. Mariella placed a hand on his arm. If my brother's inside, we don't leave without him. Taklashim studied her face, then nodded once. They crept forward, using scrub and rock as cover. The fort's perimeter was quiet. 2 guards at the front gate smoked lazily, their rifles resting against a broken crate. Mariella watched one swat at flies with his hat. Not Trask's men, Taklashim whispered. Too relaxed. But could still be under his thumb. He nodded grimly. They moved toward the back where a section of wall had collapsed. Inside, firelight flickered through slats in the wood. Voices, low, tired, unguarded. A man coughed. Someone muttered about beans. Mariella pressed close to the gap and peered through. A dozen men in ragged uniforms slumped around makeshift beds. Some too young, others too old. Prisoners, yes, but not well treated. She scanned their faces, searching. And then, her breath caught. Emilio. He was seated in the corner, arms around his knees, thinner than she remembered but unmistakable. The same stubborn set of the jaw. The same dark hair falling over one eye. Tears blurred her vision. She blinked them away. We have to get him out. Taklashim's jaw tightened. 2 at the front. 3 inside. 1 patrolling the wall. Not impossible. He nodded. Not easy either. They retreated a safe distance and whispered a plan. Timing. Signals. Distractions. Every second counted. When the moon reached its peak, they moved. Taklashim crept to the eastern wall, crouched behind a crate, and pulled a small flask from his pack. He uncorked it and poured the contents, grease and lamp oil, on a stack of firewood near the mess tent. Then he struck flint. Flames leapt up, bright and hungry. Shouts rang out. Guards rushed toward the fire, weapons forgotten in the scramble. Mariella used the moment, darting toward the broken wall, slipping through with practiced speed. Inside, the prisoners stirred, coughing at the smoke. She found Emilio and dropped to her knees beside him. Emilio. It's me. His eyes widened. Mariella? No time. Can you walk? I think so. She helped him to his feet and guided him to the wall. One of the other prisoners, a wiry older man with a knife scar across his neck, stepped forward. You takin him, take me too. Mariella hesitated. Emilio looked at her, pleading. He saved my life. She nodded. Go. Fast. They slipped out one by one, climbing over rubble. Taklashim met them and waved them toward the ridge. A gunshot cracked the night. One of the guards had seen them. Another shot. The wiry man grunted, clutching his side. Taklashim returned fire, dropping the shooter, then shouted, "Run!" They sprinted, dodging low brush and rocks, the night alive with shouting and rifle reports. Emilio stumbled, nearly fell, but Mariella caught him. "Come on. Just a little farther." Another bullet whistled past. Taklashim veered left, drawing fire away. He disappeared behind a rise. 2 guards chased him. Mariella dragged Emilio to a dip in the land, sheltered by a fallen tree. Then silence. Only the wind and the rustle of dry leaves. Taklashim appeared again, panting, blood on his sleeve. Hit. Grazed. They're dead. Emilio gasped. "Why are you helping us?" Taklashim met his eyes. Because she asked. They didn't camp that night. They kept moving until dawn lit the sky in burnt orange and soft gray. Only when the fort was no longer visible did they stop to rest. Emilio slept first, curled against a rock like a child. Mariella watched him, relief mixing with disbelief. "He's alive," she whispered. Taklashim sat beside her, nursing his arm. "You saved him," she said. "You did." She shook her head. "I was broken when you found me. You weren't broken. Just lost." A long silence passed. Finally she asked, "What now?" Taklashim stared into the distance. "There's a town north of here. Safe enough. You and your brother could start over. And you? I have places to be." Mariella's voice dropped. "Do you?" He didn't answer. She turned to him, eyes fierce. "Then stay." He studied her, the woman who had once been half dead in the sand and now glowed with grit and fire. "You sure?" "I've never been more." A soft smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. They watched the sun rise over the desert, lighting the earth in gold and crimson. The storm had passed, the war behind them. And yet, something in the wind carried a whisper of all they'd endured. The desert had tried to swallow her. But she rose from it. Carried in the arms of a warrior, yes, but now standing on her own. And together they turned toward the horizon. Toward life.